sometimes when you sit and prepare for an interview, you find out there's so much meat on this bone that it's going to be, we almost need to find out what we're going to focus on. Because today's Maverick, Cassie, has written a book called Standout Hospitality, where there's about 5 pillars of wisdom in. And I was very much, where do we actually start with this and how we actually dive into it? Because I think there's so much golden information and wisdom for you guys out here. There's about 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry, and then plus lots of years of consulting and building a community. And actually the whole vision about, changing hospitality as a force for good is something we share as well, because that's actually the baseline why Hospitality Mavericks was born. How can we actually build Mavericks businesses that actually makes profit, but also impact? So, and after our first conversation, I also found out we have lots of shared friends, from Kieran to Nicole to many others we knew. And it was funny, we hadn't met before. Welcome to the show, Cassie. I'm looking forward to dive into your new book.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Talking hospitality is my favorite thing. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Can you give us a bit of a, overview about your journey, the short version of your journey, and why hospitality, and how it all ended out with writing a book and building a community for independent hospitality operators?
Okay, so you want the short version. That's the short version of how do you get 30 years into that? Okay, so I'll start with, I went to university. I got my degree in physics, which is obviously not at all connected to hospitality. But whilst I was studying, I did what a lot of students did back then, was get a job in a pub. And it was a flagship pub, and so we had this. It was huge student pub, and loads of training. And it was the first time somebody had mentioned to me about customer service standards, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, we have mystery customers." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to change the world." What greet the customer in whatever time limit, and mystery customers and all of that. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, the world's going to change." And lo and behold, it's actually nothing much did change. But it sparked an interest and a passion, and I absolutely loved it. And so I left university, and within a couple of years, I'd set up my own place with a couple of friends back in the day where that was possible. We grabbed together some money, got family and friends involved, and opened our own place. And I was going to say the rest is history, but you want to hear it. And that very quickly grew to being a place that won awards, and we kept building, and we had all the ups and downs that people do in business. Pretty much both of those partners that I went in with, we went our separate ways at different points, but after that came 3 rosette restaurants that I had. I also had a cafe and bar, one that went from 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week. Totally insane. Talk about sweating the asset, which is what you did back then. And then I've had a members club. I got involved in all sorts of different things, and set up a couple of festivals, and then even had a country pub at one point. So I had, and within all of that, every single one of them, I was setting them up from scratch and building them to be an award-winning venues. So I think by the end, I've got over 25 different industry and business awards.
Wow.
But I got to the point, and then also, obviously, as you do after 20 odd years in the industry, I was then on call for consultancy and supporting other small businesses and helping other people. And then I got to a point after lockdown, in fact, a couple of years ago, when the latest project was coming to an end, and I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I go and start this all again? Do I do this again? And I think somebody said a lovely phrase recently, which was, I aged out of it. And I feel like I've aged out of it now. I feel like starting all over again and doing that all over again is probably a little bit beyond what I want to do, really. And also I feel that achieved all the things I wanted to do. Obviously, I've done all these different varieties of independent hospitality and won all of these awards. And I was like, why would I be doing it again? And there was a moment I was interviewing someone for my podcast, and this wonderful pair of operators, and they would, as I was interviewing them, I was sitting in my head thinking, oh yeah, I used to be like that, because they were talking with their passion and their drive and their mission and their vision, and how much they were so excited about what they were doing. And I just realized I'm not excited by it in the same way. So I thought, okay, look, I'm not going to start again. I'm not going to do another venue, but what am I going to do? And I think there was a moment where I just thought, do you know what? I've got this 30 years of experience, and within that, so all of this success and all of these venues and different types of ways of doing things, but also all of the difficulty, all of those sleepless nights, and the times when it didn't go so well, and the having to start again from scratch because something's gone wrong, or because you know, partnerships fell out or whatever. And I just thought, I can't walk away from this industry with all of that really hard earned knowledge and depth of understanding. And I just really felt that I had an obligation to those still doing it with all of that passion and care, to at the very least hold the door open for them. And so so what I do now with Kith and Kin, which is creating a community for independent hospitality, because whilst I was doing it, I found it a very, very lonely thing to be doing on your own. And so it's a place for independent hospitality to all come together and have that peer support, but also the full ecosystem of independent hospitality all in one place. But then also the book itself being pretty much trying as much as you can to distill all of that understanding and knowledge into one book, in the hope that it offers that support, and as much as anything else, the understanding that those still in the thick of it, you know, still bouncing, as hospitality is always in crisis, so bouncing from one crisis to the next, to actually offer them basically a hand, I guess, in a lot of ways.
And I love that you're very focused, and again for the audience, that you're very focusing on the independent operator here, and that's really where the focus is. But it doesn't mean, and when I read these, your 5 concepts we're going to dive into in a moment, I believe that these are all relevant for no matter what size of business you're in. You might just be further on some of them, but you're never 100%. It's about mastery, and you're never going to be, it's like the circle of life if you're a coach. There's the 7 areas you need to master: your finances, your relationships, your health, and all those things needs to be in balance. Exactly about how your business also goes through different stages will have to look differently on those 5 pillars. And that's what I love about the work you've done here. And it's difficult sometimes when you sit down and write things, but I can really see how you can train the muscle in all of these, no matter which business you is. But you focus specifically on the independent. Of course, that's your journey. That's what you understand and what you know. And I think it's an incredible journey, and doing it so many times. Anyone that listens, and including myself, that's done maybe half of what you've done on building businesses, knows the pain you go through to get to that, and the time. Yeah. And that's not easy. Can you talk a bit about, what inspired you to write the book now, and and how should this book play a role in hospitality as we go forward, especially for the independent operator?
But I think it's quite so. The reason why I wrote it from the perspective of an independent is, I mean, you're right, it is applicable to all of hospitality, really, and at different stages of hospitality. And I mean, in fact, I speak to a lot of people just in small business. It applies a lot to almost all small business, but it is through that lens of independent hospitality, because I found that in my journey, I've always looked for mentors or places to learn a bit more. about what I was doing, or to be able to set the context of it. And what I always found was I'd go to a conference or whatever it was, and the speaker would always be from that corporate background, and it would probably be a CEO or something. And they would tell me, they tell the audience all about how to set culture, or how to manage your HR, or the tactics, or you'd have a, social media tactics, or whatever, marketing, whatever. And I'd all be sitting there and going, oh yeah, this is great. And I'd be making notes. And then you just think, well, hold on a second. How am I going to make that? How can I do it like that in my business? It's all very fair and well, somebody telling me from this, environments where they've got departments that can back them up, and, someone to write their HR policy, or somebody to, I don't know, as an independent, you come into work and someone forgot to order any lemons, so you've got to go to the shop, and then someone calls in sick, and then the toilet's blocked, and then the tills go down, and you've got to be responsible for all that at the same time as, like, oh yeah, but I was going to train the staff all in culture today. So it was just I was just sort of very frustrated that the advice coming to independence was coming from a perspective that didn't acknowledge that in independent hospitality, in particular, all hospitality is crazy. But in independents in particular, and those operators, they're completely being bombarded with so much, and it's so overwhelming that as much as they are driven for best practice, that's really hard to achieve with just a tactic. And what was being delivered previously, always as being tactics. Here's a tactic, how you do this. So what I wanted to achieve with the 5 pillars was like, okay, I don't want to give people tactics. I've got a whole list of tactics that will get people from A to B. Fine. But I don't think that's what's most useful. I thought what would be more useful was to have these 5 pillars, which is basically where you rest the business. The business rests on these 5 pillars, and you work on them as and when you've, and actually you align all the decisions you're making within your business for yourself, for your team, for your customers, along those five pillars. So yes, it was very much along those kind of lines. And as you say, someone new starting out, it's valuable to be able to set those as some foundation. But if it's somebody who's been in business for a long time, they're designed to be sort of like an opportunity to take a look and sort of reassess and reset along those. Yeah.
And talk a bit about then the model in the book. Maybe just talk us through an overview of the 5 pillars, and then we can dive down on some of them, just so people get an understanding what exactly that the model touch. If I pull it over my business, how would it actually feel and look? Yeah.
Okay, so the idea is that there are 5 pillars to a standout hospitality business, and that's based on, my experience of all the things that I've done, but more than that, also on the people I work with, but also just, my colleagues and other people in the industry, those standout businesses. Because even in today's climate, where, we're all hearing how hard hospitality is, there are standout businesses. There are businesses that are doing well. And, my observation is what they're doing well are along these 5 pillars. So number 1 is setting high standards. So it is leading with consistency, clarity, and care, because as a leader, if you are clear on what those standards are, then your team know what they're following. But I mean, I do couch that a little bit in terms of saying it's not about perfection. We're all perfectionists in hospitality, but this isn't about perfection. This isn't about setting standards and then holding them to perfection, but it's about having pride in everything you do. The second pillar is standing out, obviously, which sounds obvious, but actually what that means is we're in an industry with constant noise. Everybody's got an opinion. So, as I say, you're getting advice from people who have their way of doing stuff, but you've also got your customers who have something to say. All of us know that, a customer walks in and has got something to say, like, no, you should be doing it like that, this or like this. Your team. I mean, I can't tell you how many members of staff who walked in and they, worked somewhere else and they go, "Oh no, you don't do it like this. You do it like this." It's not like, okay, fine. Let's try your way for a while, shall we? But also just your family and friends. Everybody has an opinion. I mean, my grandmother used to come to my place all the time and tell me about how I needed to be doing golden years menus in my city centre bar. It was just like, everyone has an opinion. And so Stand Out is about just turning off that noise, but being brave enough to actually know that you can niche and should niche. You're not for everybody. So not everyone's opinion is valuable. And so it's to know that you have a niche and to then basically not be rude to people, but, just sort of turn it off. You don't need to listen to everybody. The third one is define your identity. So this is what everyone's familiar with, being purpose driven, knowing what your purpose is, having that grounded in your why. Why do you do it? Why do you love the industry? And that creating the purpose. Why does it matter to you? But why does it matter to others? And then from that, you develop your vision, you develop a mission and your values. And the mission very clearly is not an A4 piece of paper stuck on a wall. The mission is that beat of a drum. It is that march that everybody goes on together that becomes intoxicating. And it sounds easier than it actually is to achieve, but it is very rooted in purpose. And it helps bring you back because it brings you to the fourth pillar, which is about build belonging. So I get very irritated by the way people talk about loyalty in hospitality, because what they're talking about is loyalty cards and data collection.
Yeah.
And not talking about loyalty. Loyalty is about relationships. And in the same way that we are loyal to each other, we're loyal to our friends, we're loyal to our family. That's what loyalty in business is as well. It's the same thing. It's an emotional connection with people, not a stamp card for your coffees, So, but if you're going to build belonging and build loyalty, you need to know who your customers are. And there are tactics around that, things like customer avatars and building that avatar out. But it's about truly understanding and knowing your customer and then building your business around that customer. So every single decision in your business, is about what would make your business best in the world to that person. And although best in the world sounds huge, actually being best in someone's world is not that difficult to achieve. Not if you really think about it, because their world is actually quite small. It's not global. It's very local. And then the fifth pillar is tell a great story. So as humans, we are very emotionally driven. We buy with emotion and justify with logic. And people buy from people. So we basically buy what we choose, how we choose to spend our time and choose to spend our money is an emotional decision, not a logical decision. And too much of what we do is we try to persuade people to spend with us by using logic and not by emotion. But actually emotionally, what people are craving is to be understood and to understand. And so if you're telling a story, you're demonstrating that you understand your customer and you're also giving them something that they can understand, which is you and your business. And it's not a lovely picture in social media of your cocktail or of your food. It's a story about you and about why this matters at all. And when people have that, they connect with it. And it makes everything you're doing just far much more, for want of a better word, joyful. And I would say that this makes your business easy, but I'm talking about hospitality, and hospitality will never be easy, but it will be simpler.
And if you're sitting and listening to, okay, these 5 pillars all give sense, but it seems like incredible difficult to do all of this, yeah? Because it's like there's some demand, some thinking here, yeah? You need to really connect with some things, and you might be a business that's already X years in, and when you start asking these questions, they might be very uncomfortable, some of these things, because
Yeah.
you should have thought about this, or, oh, we're not actually niche, we're actually for everyone, and therefore it's why we only make 1% on the bottom, because we're not really decided who we're for, or
Yeah.
customers can't understand who you're for. Would you say that is there a specific way to approach this framework? Could you start in one place, or do you need to follow a recipe? Is it really up to where the biggest gap is? Is that what you say? And actually work with your business from where you actually need to close the biggest gap here and now, and then you build on one pillar at a time?
I think it's very personal, and it's very personal to the journey that somebody's on. And I think that was very much in the purpose of writing the book was, as I say, it wasn't about here's a tactic, off you go, go and do it. This is going to make it all better. It was much more like, here's the overall picture, and this is a way of thinking. And if you align yourself to this, it's going to make your everything simpler. And I think it really, as you say, depends on where they are. For some people I work with, the first thing I say to them is just stop listening to other people. Just stop. That's a really good starting point. Just turn off the noise is quite often a really good starting point. But I would say that probably the most crucial, which is where I start the book at, actually, there's a couple of chapters at the beginning, which is like the why. Why do we even love this business? Why are so many of us drawn to it? What is it about hospitality? Because I mean, I think most of us would agree that it's not about making huge amounts of money, because, hospitality's never been an easy way to make money. But there is something that draws a lot of us to it. But also, I mean, a lot that makes other people run a mile. For every one person you find who absolutely loves this industry, you'll probably find 8, 9, 10 that say, why? I don't get it. But starting from that point, I think might be, a really good place for people to understand what, particularly for independent businesses are by their very nature purpose driven, even if the owner hasn't really thought about that. Because that owner, the day that they said, right, that's it, I'm going to go and open my place, I'm going to go and do this, they had a reason why that was important to them, their little bit of the world that they wanted to change, in whatever way that was, even if it was just their own little world, and their own reasons for doing it. But that is the fundamental starting point. Why is this important to you? And then once you know why it's important to you and why you love it, and reconnect with that, because quite often, if you've been doing this a while, and that noise has crept in, it's quite often the case that people have sort of lost that love a little bit because they're in firefighting constantly. But to reconnect with that, I think, is a fundamental. And then once you know why it matters to you, then you can work out why it matters to other people. I had a lovely, because we've just done the book launch, and it was a lovely event, and it was absolutely full of some, lots of people, but there was quite a few people there who were from the business community, but had come, I hadn't seen for years, but they had been customers at my venues, different venues. And it was this absolutely lovely thing after the book launch, and after I'd done the book signing and everything, that people come up to me and saying, oh yeah, and they were telling me their stories, go back to storytelling, telling me their stories of, how much my venues mattered to them for different reasons, that they just moved to the town and this is where they met their friends, or this is where they met their partners, or this is where they, something bad has happened in their lives, but that this is a place that they came to make them, feel normal again. So many stories. And, it's sort of, you sort of sit there and you go, these places, so often meant so much more to my customers than they ever did to me. They outgrew me. There was a reason why they mattered to me, but how they mattered to my customers was so much more. And now they're ingrained as part of their stories that these people tell. It's wonderful. This industry gives me goosebumps.
And it comes back to one of the things you said when we had talked a couple of times. You talk about that, there's few industries like hospitality that meets all the needs for human needs, yeah, in different situations at different times of life and so on. And why is it so important to understand that as an operator, you think? Because you talked about belonging before, and belonging, often when we talk about the word belonging in business, you often think about building a company culture with belonging. But I think when you talk about it, you talk in a much wider range. And you just gave a really good example about it right now, I think.
Yes, because I think so. In the book, I use two different models for, and one of them is, one of them is Tony Robbins' view on the six human needs. I should know this. This is how I should know. It's a human needs that people are motivated to find these things in their lives, but also Maslow, which is it's like a model from 1943, and Maslow talks about the basic human needs is basic survival needs like food and water, and then once you've satisfied them, then you can move up to things about like security, so having shelter, stability, your health needs met, and beyond that, only then, once those satisfies, only then do people move into thinking about relationships and friendships and being part of a community, and only then do they then move to looking for things like respect or recognition. And only then you get to the really high level, which is about personal growth and achieving your potential. And you can sort of see that. I think instinctively we can understand the reason that model's lasted is because instinctively we see that that makes sense. You can't go for self-enlightenment if you're starving, hungry, and you haven't had anything to eat, or you can't keep yourself safe at night. From hospitality, go on. Sorry.
And I just think it's interesting because I didn't click it, but again, just more my mind back to Tony Robbins, which I think, if you like him or not, I was not a fan till I went to one of his events, because the simplicity of actually understanding human needs, because we all are driven by either we want to avoid pain or gain pleasure, and that's where it starts. Yeah. And you have to understand that's level number one. It's a bit like Maslow, but I think Tony Robbins, if you take them next to each other, they're actually the same, but it's much more hands-on, much more understandable, less complex than in the other thing. And then it ends with contribution, because he says if you don't do the journey of the 6 human needs, you can actually contribute. You can't be in service to others, and that's the ultimate level of being alive, being able to give money to other people, to be philanthropists, to build businesses that creates jobs and so on. But actually you have to understand that if you operate on pain and gain level only, you're never gonna get to the highest level of your accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And by contribution, to some people, it is big stuff, but for other people, it is just simply being part of a community, to be contributing to other people. Just even a smile in the street is a contribution, isn't it? I mean, it's so our need to contribute to other people is such an innate need. So I think from when we look at it from the lens of being a hospitality business, far too often people mistake our businesses as being about food and drink. Like, let's go and get something to eat. Let's go and get a drink. And it's never about that. It's never about food and drink. And I used to train my staff on this all the time, that If someone was coming in even for a takeaway coffee, they weren't coming in because they were thirsty. They were coming in to meet some of these other needs. So, well, even if that was just to make them feel significant, to make them feel, that they deserved a treat, because we can all make coffee at home these days. To go out for a coffee is a treat, isn't it? It's to be wanting to feel special. And so when you're designing your business and when you're building your teams and engaging with your customers, if you think that what you're doing is selling food and drink, then you've missed the point. Because nobody is coming to your venue because they're hungry or because they're thirsty, or if you're a hotel, for instance, because they need somewhere to sleep. It's a higher level that they're coming for, and because it's not for food, it's not for drink, it's not for shelter. It is because they want to connect with others, or they want to build relationships, or they want to contribute, or all of these other needs. So basically, hospitality, yes, it satisfies food and drink as well, but it covers, it's very rare in that it covers all of human needs, all in one space. And that's, to me, just makes it just beautiful.
Yeah, and if you take that lens, it also gives you an understanding about why it's such a complex business to build. And if you eventually want to grow that, that's actually, you can do it. Lots of people think about Excel spreadsheet and then they put in 1 restaurant, 2 restaurant, 3 restaurant, but they actually forget that element because that's what you're scaling and that's the difficult part. And then they really fit that. And some do it really well. Some are really good at that. At some point, they also didn't ask themselves, how big can this business become in serving the human needs? Yeah. So they just continue growing and then all the humanness goes out of it and it becomes a transaction. And that's, it seems like there's some businesses that can do it. I'm not saying it's not possible. There is business that can do that. I worked for one myself. It was McDonald's. It covers some human needs, but actually at some point it's just about the transaction in principle. And if you just have to admit that that's what the business is about and you're buying a transaction in that moment, many people are using that as a transactional thing, but many small independent operators, it's exactly about what you're talking about. It's the quality of those human needs and how you meet them, and the quality of relationship. I think it's often, I don't know if you agree, but I think it's often forgotten in when we make leadership decisions. How is this going to impact the quality of my relationship with my staff, my relationship with my suppliers, and so on? It's not thought into that unity, holistic unity of things when you make decisions in small businesses, because you are thinking, I'm going to make this decision to improve that, but you don't think about the quality of your relationship with the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah, because as you say, if you're just thinking about the transaction, you'll miss the point. And you're totally right about McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's is absolutely fantastic at what it does, but it's a kiosk business, so it is about the transaction. And therefore, I mean, actually, I'll give a little bit to McDonald's because even I use it sometimes as a bit of a treat as well. But nonetheless, it has a model of transaction and it smashes it. So, it does it so well. So as a hospitality business, you can't compete with that. You can't compete with the scale of McDonald's and do McDonald's the way McDonald's does McDonald's. And so if you are anything other than just a transaction for food and drink, then then it is about these higher level needs. And if you start just if you start thinking just about everything just as a transaction, you will miss those higher level needs and why those customers come to you. And then you just become part of the noise. And then you just become part of the competition. And then why is the customer coming to you when they could go to McDonald's and get it faster and cheaper with better customer service in the way that they want it? They're not going to come to you. You start competing on a level that you can't compete. But what you can always win, competing, is for your niche, you can be best in the world because you're satisfying these other needs.
Yeah, and I guess also that's the difficult bit, isn't it? Like that's really because that means that it's not about tactics anymore. It's about your philosophy and how you get your philosophy embedded into everything you do and get other people to live your philosophy, your staff, your team, and your customer to take that. You talk about one thing I think that's really interesting we need to touch on as well. You says that the industry isn't broken. A lot of people talked about the industry, it's broken, it can't find its way. You say the model is. What do you mean with that? And what does a better model look like?
Well, I think when people talk about the industry being broken, I think there's a lot of things going on. I think that, I mean, even since when I started, competition has increased massively. You're not just talking about venues anymore. You're now talking about, home entertainment and Netflix and supermarkets and supermarket deals, but, deliver it for home delivery, takeaways, all of that. These are all the noise and the competition, but I think also culturally, particularly since the pandemic, culturally, our world has sped up hugely in terms of change. We are changing so quickly, and so you had all the fallout of the pandemic, and when everything came back online after lockdown, it changed people's behavior. And then you've now got technology speeding it up even more. And so how people behave and what they're looking for is completely changing. So hospitality, the models, hospitality, and particularly independence, we sit on the cold face. So we feel all of that absolutely in real time. We don't get to analyze it and then change. We have to be changing as it happens. We have to be picking up on those changes with our customers and then adapting. And I think that sometimes there are a lot of hospitality industry businesses that are still trying to run their businesses pre-lockdown models rather than actually where the world is now, and understanding that the world is changing so quickly that it hasn't even settled yet. So you're in this massive period of uncertainty and you're trying to adapt to that constantly. So the model, in quite a lot of cases, the models do need to change. But I think that's, again, the new model. I'm going to tell you it's the 5 pillars, because I think it's not one thing. There's not one answer for everybody. The answer is to know who your customers are and build belonging to who they are. And also for you to be embedded in your business, you can. I mean, if there's anything I want people to come away from is to understand that particularly for an independent business, it can be led by you and be about you and about you first. It doesn't need to be. We're led to believe it needs to be your team first, or it needs to be your customers first. In independent hospitality, it can be you first. This is your business. You get to decide. This is your passion. This is your purpose. You get to decide. It can be you first. And when you strip it back to that being purpose driven and then build on those 5 pillars as you go, then actually, yes, there's a lot of complexity, but there always is in hospitality. But actually, you've just created a very simple business with some very simple ideas, which you are building on.
And it's so interesting that you said that because actually what people also need sometimes, and I think they need that in any business, but I think there's also been a big change of, you need to involve people in a lot of decisions, but there's some decisions you have to take. I often say to people as well, you are the founder, you are the CEO. You need to get clarity of purpose and direction, as you say, the 5 pillars, and is very similar to my thinking around that. Is actually it's your job to do that, because before, if you don't fill out that algorithm, they don't know what they should be doing, because that's where we start, and their customers don't know why they're coming to you. And actually, some businesses are actually often focusing a lot on the product instead of the 6 human needs. So they follow for the tactic of the product. Oh, it's because we need to change some items on the menu because the customers doesn't really like them. That's why they're not coming in. No, it's actually because you're not connecting with the 6 human needs, as you call them, or the Maslow. You don't really understand what triggers them. What is the 80% of your customer coming for? Yeah. What is that thing? And it'd probably be a combination of many things. They might come for 3 human needs at your place and they're getting the other human needs somewhere else. But you have to figure out where what you really can do for majority of your customers. And just, I think you really have the chance as independent to change this. If you have a bigger business, this is where it gets really hard, because then, yeah, you're bigger geographical areas, but actually business you're in every day, this is your job, answering those questions and going around repeating them again and again. And I know it's your job to go and get lemons and cover sick leave and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing is with a bigger business, because they're chains and because they've got a head office, they are very led by the standard operating procedures and the data and the feedback. You know, they're getting customer feedback, and they, you know, everyone will say we're getting customer feedback so we can improve. They're not. They're getting customer feedback. Sorry, this is, no, they're getting customer feedback so that they can monitor how well the staff and the team are doing. Well, are you delivering our standards? Are you doing what we should do? So actually that connection between them and the customers is, there's a gap, because the gap is the data, and they're looking for the data. Now, the thing is that but the problem independents have got is, unless that they can get there, but if they try and copy that, they're missing the point as well. And those businesses are really good at what they do because they are extremely consistent. I mean, go back to McDonald's, extremely consistent in what they're delivering, and delivering it well and all the time. So customers choose those venues because they don't want to take a risk on something else. And so independents are always quite a risk. If you don't know that independent, then it's a risk. So why would you risk your money and your time? And not just money, it's time. It's time that they're risking, and they're or that those needs being met. So if you're going out because actually you want to sit down with your teenage child that you haven't spoken to properly for months, you want it, the environment you're in, the canvas, the space needs to be right. So you're not going to take the risk on somewhere new. But it goes back, which is why you stick to the chains. But the independents can beat that by making sure they are, as I say, that beacon. Because if your customers know that you are their place, and they really feel that you understand them and they understand you, they will never go anywhere else ever again, because you are theirs.
And I guess it's like when you get to that level of quality in your relationship, it's not really, that's loyalty. Yeah. That's repeat business on a different level. It's not a transactional loyalty. It's not a stamp in your app or on your little coffee cart. It's actually real loyalty. Yeah. And actually you don't need the other things, because they don't come because they get 7 coffee free. That's a nice to have, but that's not really what's important. It's something very deeper. And I think if you can start thinking about that as you're building a business or you're rediscovering your business, I didn't call rebuild. I often think that's quite negative, but like rediscovering your business that doesn't, age out of it. I love the way you said that, framed that. I had to write that word down. I thought it was really great. I'm going to use that tomorrow in the meeting. I thought, like, you're aging out of your business. I love that. So I'm going to borrow that. So it's really about the quality of the relationship is coming back to, and then building the belonging as well. If you could give like a top advice to leaders out there that's building a business as a force for good, a business that just not only makes money, because we need to make money first. We're very aware of that. It's not because we don't need to make profit, but they really also want to make an impact, a force for good in that state. What would your top advice be in today's environment with all the noise that's going on?
If you're an independent operator, you probably already are a force for good, and you will already be purpose driven. You just might not have thought about it. And so my advice would be that you already know far much more than you think you do. And but also, and I think this is important because it's something that I had difficulty with all the way through my career, is that particularly these days, you don't have to do it alone. There are people around you who also are in the same boat, who aren't. We live in a world. One of the wonderful things that happened after lockdown and the pandemic is that regardless of how difficult everything has become or is, and how divided the world feels, actually, my experience is that everyone is much more prepared to collaborate and share than they were before. And
I agree.
there is an opportunity to find those people and to be part of a community that will support you, because it is tough.
Yeah. And, it's all on LinkedIn and in podcast interviews off the facade, there's more to it than what the screen or the LinkedIn post said. What is it is with these conversations, there's never enough time. Yeah, as I said from the beginning, there's so much we could dive into, and there will probably be another conversation in the near future. I can feel from this conversation. But what is the one question you wished I've asked you, Cassie, and what would it be, and what would be your answer?
Well, I do. I think probably covered it. I mean, I probably covered it. It's just what the advantage that independent hospitality businesses already have that they're not using enough. And it is that, and I think it is, if they tune into it, it becomes a very unfair advantage that independents have, in that, that their purpose is already baked in. That it's already part of what they're doing, and also that they know more than they think they do.
Because purpose is also not always something you write down on a piece of paper. I think I want to add that, because lots of people think that's what it is, but actually it will be as you grow the business. That then it's an important tactic, but the purpose really for you to have it in top of your mind all the time. Why I'm here, where I'm going, what I'm creating.
Yeah, and the thing, and you know that there's big chains that are operating, mega sites and whatever, and actually they have to lock themselves in a room with the whole of the senior leadership team for a week and still don't come out with a clear purpose, because they never started with a purpose. But
a transaction, a very clever transaction,
yeah, and they're very good at it.
Yeah,
but we live in a modern world that I say is changing very, very quickly and rapidly at the minute, both post pandemic, but also with all of this technology moving us really, really fast. And what it is highlighting is this human need for connection and for places where we belong. And independent hospitality has got that. It's already contributing. It is already making a difference. And as an independent, you can tune into it really quickly. It's hard. I'm not pretending it's easy. Sitting down and having to think is hard work, and finding time to do that is hard work, but it's there and you already know the answer.
Yeah, I think what the framework would do when you read the book, or you decide to read some of the book, you will start asking yourself some of these questions you need to ask yourself, because it's not about answers, about the quality of the question you can ask yourself as you work through the 5 pillars. That's been my own learning. So that's what I just wanted to add. Where can people find out more about you, the community? Where should they go to connect with you if they want the book and all that stuff?
Well, the book, I mean, as I mentioned this to you already, but I'm more than happy to, my publishers don't like me when I do this, but to offer the book for free to your listeners. And I'll send you the links that can go in the show notes. But also to find out about the community, which is for independent hospitality businesses, and it's the full ecosystem of everything an independent operator needs. That's Kith and Kin. And that's kithandkin.co.uk. But also just the Google will get you that. Cassie Davison Google will get you to my LinkedIn and everywhere else as well. So a little bit of Googling, I think, helps, but I'll give you the links as well.
We'll throw that in the show notes, and I send you, Cassie, power and energy and love to the journey of getting the word out there about Standout Hospitality, but also for the community and all the other great work you do. I know how much it takes, all the energy it takes. So I hope the audience will reach out to you as well, because I think there's some really strong reflections in this book, and I'm sure you already made a huge impact, and more will be done. I think they said there's a book touches at least 1,200 individuals in his lifetime or more. Yeah. So I'm sure there's lots of businesses going to be better after diving into your book. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.